Thanks for making the time today to join us for our presentation today on the attack surface report and how to use them to grow your MSP. Our goal here today is to better equip you to use this tool that is the attack surface report. We refer to it as an ASR quite often. And whether you've leveraged it before or not, there's going to be something useful for you here today, whether it's the very first one or you have used them before. Stick around and we're going to have some goodies for you. So today we're going to be doing an overview of the ASR, how to actually request one for yourself or a customer, what an example of this ASR looks like, how to effectively use it, and some trends that we're seeing. Excited to present Matt Lewis here today, who is the CSO at Field Effect. He joined Field Effect after a 20-year government career at the Communications Security Establishment, which is essentially the NSA of Canada, and the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. In these roles, he had a focus on IT strategy, security operations, data analysis, and incident response, so very, very well versed when it comes to cybersecurity. And here at Field Effect, he oversees all aspects of our physical and information security and compliance programs. The attack surface report itself really started as somewhat of a passion project for Matt on the side of his desk, and he scaled it today to be this fully formed business development tool that he'll be walking you through today. So let's get into business. Matt, over to you.
Welcome to all our channel partners and prospective channel partners out there. So what is an attack surface report? Well, what we're doing with this tool is we're looking at the internet connected devices of an organization. So everything that's connected to the internet. And we're getting this data through open source repositories like Shodan. So what we're hoping to find, and what we usually find, is devices, servers, networking equipment. Unfortunately, what we end up finding is a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Stuff that likely shouldn't be directly connected to the internet or is misconfigured or just has opportunities for improvement. So that's really what we're looking at from an attack surface. It's from the outside in, the internet looking at an organization and what a hacker sees when they look up that organization. So our report, the first thing is that it's completely complementary to our channel partners. We want to see you guys grow. We love you, and we're trying to give you the tools that you can use to grow your business. So there's no charge to Field Effect partners. The second thing that's important to note is that it's completely non-invasive. So as I was saying in that slide before, we're using open source databases, that same tools that the hackers use, like Shodan. So we don't actually have to do any type of penetration testing. We don't have to touch the infrastructure of that network. There's no nmapping or TCP reconnaissance. There's plenty of that going on the internet already. We don't need to add to that mess. Lastly, is it's automated. As Chloe was stating, it's kind of been a passion project for mine to keep one foot in data analysis. So on the side, I've been building up the code, which kind of takes everything that I know about cybersecurity and what's bad in Shodan and automating it into a repeatable PDF that you guys can use. So how do you request one? There's a public form that includes all the details we need. So we've put a QR code on the screen right there. You can take a screenshot right now or put that into your phone. But it's open up to anyone. And all we need is the domain, the net blocks, the IPs that the organization has, and then your details, who you want the report sent to. That's all it requires. We don't specifically need the net blocks, the IPs, but we can usually get a good report just based off the domain. But any additional information you have is appreciated. And we've seen a lot of ASRs lately where the difference between having that IP and not having that IP, it takes really a ho-hum report with not a lot of findings, and it really encapsulates the true threat surface of that organization, and it's pretty bad. So anytime you can give us the IPs, we really appreciate that. If the small and medium-sized business doesn't know what their IPs are, usually you can get one or two by having them visit a website like What's My IP while they're connected to their VPN or they're in the office. That's usually all it takes. So let's go through an attack surface report and the structure of it for an organization. I ran a sample one. It's all redacted, so we don't have to tell you who the exact organization was. I will tell you it's a healthcare organization in the Midwest, though. So the title page, you see at the top your logo here. So we're trying to make our MSP partners the stars of the ASR. It's completely white labeled. You won't see any mentions of Field Effect in there. So we'll get a logo from you, or we can get it off your website, and we can really customize the template of this report so it reflects you and your style. The next thing we have is the table of contents. So it's pretty self-explanatory there. One of the nice things about the table of contents is it has a little icon over on the left for each section of the report, whether there was any findings there. So the person reading it can immediately look down the table of contents and see if there were issues in section 3, vulnerabilities, or maybe section 8, protocols. I'll note at the bottom that Annex A contains the full logs of the report, but there might be 2 annexes. If we detected in Shodan that there's publicly available screenshots for this organization, something to do with a login screen, they will be included in a separate annex, Annex B. If there's no screenshots, we don't even include Annex B in the report. Next, we get on to the introduction. Again, we're going to tailor this so that you're the stars of the show. We'll take a chunk from your website, the About Us section, or you can send us some custom text, and we can highlight in the second part of this page what's unique about your business and the services that you offer to your customers. We'll also attach a link to your homepage so that the person receiving the report can find out more details about you. The next one's the executive summary. And the summary starts with us calculating the overall risk. We're not trying to make some complex calculation here. We're just saying that if you've had, 6 or 7 issues in the report, you're going to be high. If you have 2 or 3 issues, it's probably a low risk. So it's not trying to be sophisticated, but I think it does a good job overall of letting the recipient know where they're at. The next thing that you'll see on this page is some automatically generated next steps. So this is all in the code. If it sees something, let's say about remote desktop, we all know that remote desktop's a big issue from a cybersecurity perspective, and that it's heavily leveraged by cyber criminals. So it'll mention something about maybe considering disabling remote desktop. If we've seen TLS versions 1.0 or 1.1, it will definitely say something about making sure that those deprecated encryption protocols are disabled. So we do our best to allow you and the recipient to pivot from the report and say, okay, this is great. I got these findings, but where do I go from here? The first section of the data part of the report is all about software. If we've seen any evidence that they're running out-of-date software, old stuff that can no longer be patched, no longer has security updates, we're going to let them know in this report. And we can see that this healthcare organization has a couple of issues in this regard. They're running an old version of Microsoft IIS web server, but they also have OpenSSL and PHP probably on another web server that's out of date. Again, in all of the data sections, we're just trying to give them an overview. The real meat of our findings, where they'll find the IP addresses that are affected, will all be in Annex A. And what this allows us to do is to have a nice, crisp, clean report, and we don't have to worry about pagination. So we can structure it in a way that it's really readable. But as you guys know, having out-of-date software, huge risk for an organization. So that's definitely the first thing to call out. The next one is operating systems. It's very similar to the first section. If we find any evidence that they're running older operating systems that no longer have security updates, we'll let them know here. And Yeah, and that goes right along with our IIS finding they're running Windows 8 or Server 2012. So something to be addressed potentially by this organization. It's not only a security risk, but it is a reputational risk for that organization. If I'm considering doing business with them and I see that they're running servers that are not even capable of being patched, I might think twice about it. Vulnerabilities. Now, this can be scary for somebody receiving this report. So I think it's really important that it be phrased correctly. Because we're doing this passively and in a non-intrusive manner, none of these vulnerabilities are confirmed. We're using NIST. We're taking all of the information we find in those open source repositories about the software, and we're comparing it to vulnerabilities and trying to match them up there. But all this is saying is that they have something connected to the internet which has had vulnerabilities associated with it. So they need to make sure it's patched, that it's up to date. But if you're running a web server and it's had 73 vulnerabilities associated with it, I can guarantee you that 74 is right around the corner. So what we're trying to highlight here is that you have some infrastructure. It doesn't mean that it can't be secured, but it needs to have a regular patching cadence there. And it's something that your MSP can likely help them with. The next one, sections 5 and section 6 are something near and dear to my heart, IoT and ICS. So Internet of Things and Industrial Control Systems. In a perfect world, we wouldn't see these at all, but they pop up all too frequently in these attack surface reports. This healthcare organization that we're running it for, you can see on the right, had building controllers, and I think they had like their HVAC system on the internet. Why is this a risk? Oftentimes, these devices are running in protocols that predate the internet. So there's no authentication, there's no encryption, no concept of security in these devices. For IoT, like cameras, they're often running end-of-life web servers. They don't have the ability to be patched, to be security upgraded. So these things are devices that should never be directly connected to the internet. So the way I would pivot off this if I was doing a briefing on this report is I would say we need to move these inside the network, preferably to their own segregated subnet, to their own VLAN where they're off on their own. Because if they've been on the internet for any amount of time, you have to assume that they're compromised in some way. The next one is protocols. And what we're looking for in the protocol section is anything that's out of date, unencrypted, or that's associated with single factor authentication. So I don't think like POP3 and IMAP that there's even a way that you can attach multi-factor authentication to those. So we would include them. We see a web server that's still responding on HTTP. We want to see TLS everywhere. So we'll flag that. And if we see something like SNMP that has known vulnerabilities, we'll flag that as well. If I was at MSP and I was giving this report to somebody, I would say that we need to look at your firewall rules and we really need to look at the business case for having these protocols accessible to the internet at all. And we're going to work with you to reduce that attack surface and really to make sure that the only thing responding from your servers and your devices are what's absolutely necessary. The next one is encryption. There might be a day in the future where we're all on a new style of encryption, maybe quantum, but for now we are dealing with the same old PKI, public key type of systems, and they are relying on certificates. And in order for those systems to be functioning well, the certificates have to be signed, not self-signed. They have to be valid, not expired. So if we see anything like that, we're going to let the customer know. We're going to let the prospect know in this section. We're going to let them know if there's expired certificates, self-signed. Wildcarded certificates, not as much of an issue, but there is that trade-off when you're working with wildcard certificates about ease of deployability versus security. So we'll let them know about that. The next two sections, the 11 is databases. If there's a database running on the internet, we want to know about it, and they should know about it because those, it's just like such a target for cyber criminals. If I'm a cyber criminal, oftentimes I have to work really, really hard to get onto your network and find where your data is and where your databases are. If you're putting it right on the internet, I'm basically getting all of that for free. So you've made my job a whole lot easier, and you've told me exactly where some of your core data is. Section 12 is the Forrest Gump box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get in Section 12. It's a grab bag of anything that didn't fit really cleanly in the first 11 sections. So if we see printers, if we see remote procedure call ports open, whole bunch of other things. And the entire code itself is composed of hundreds and hundreds of signatures, and we're adding more all the time so they can accurately reflect what's going on with our customers and with the threat surface there. As I mentioned earlier, Annex A has that detailed report that you're going to need in order to pivot off of the findings and actually start attacking some of these problems. And it's broken out nicely into individual sections so that you can find all of the ICS systems pretty easily by looking under Section 5. Annex B might be there, might not be there, but if it is there, it's going to have some exciting stuff, because what it means is that one of those repositories had some screenshots of this organization's actual devices. So maybe they had RDP open and it was able to take a screenshot of the login. Maybe they had an ICS system with no authentication, and we were able to, Shodan was able to grab that. These aren't for that healthcare organization. I just put these in as an example of what Annex B could show. And if they are in this report, this is really where it gets real for the organization receiving it. And you can tell them, look, a hacker with just a simple query can bring this up, and they can see what your infrastructure looks like without even having to touch it. It brings home how real the threats are and how focused on security organizations need to be in 2024. So here's my takeaways from doing a couple of presentations to people on ASRs about what works, what doesn't, and what are the keys to using them. The first one, and I think the most important, is that consent is key. If you're looking to drop an attack surface report on somebody who hasn't requested one, generally speaking, the conversation doesn't go well. So I would encourage you just to offer it up, see if they want it, and it usually makes things go a whole lot smoother. The second one is to break it to them gently. This report, it does lend itself to hyperbole, but I think the key there is to focus and not spin it up too much that, oh, you're going to get hacked tomorrow. The best way to approach it is to say, look, this tells you where you're at right now. And with a little bit more investment, with a little bit more monitoring, we can slowly make improvements on this. Third would be to pivot, would be to take the findings in this report and to pivot to how you can help them. Maybe it's told them something about their email security, that they need a DMARC record. Maybe it's identified that they're running Office 365. It gives you a lot of opportunities to kind of pivot and tailor and talk about the services that your MSP provides and how you can help them not only with security, but the day-to-day building and operation of their IT. Good isn't necessarily bad. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes people think that the worse the attack surface report, the easier the conversation is going to go. And generally, I have found that not to be true. Oftentimes, the worse the report, the worse the conversation goes, because what it highlights and sometimes is that you're dealing with a small or medium-sized business that has completely neglected their IT, either through lack of investment or just lack of caring. And getting them to actually suddenly care about that is difficult. Often the best conversations I find are more in the medium range, where they're doing a pretty good job overall, but your report is able to highlight some issues that they weren't aware of, and they're keen on improving. So they're like, oh, thanks. I didn't know about that. I could have spent a lot of money on a penetration test to get similar results, and you're kind of just offering this guidance up to me for free. I appreciate that. Lastly is we can help. If you're new to using the attack surface report, you don't yet have the confidence to take a prospect through it, we would be happy to do your first couple, either myself or one of our sales engineers who are well versed with using this tool. And we can, until you have that confidence level, we can help you out there. Trends that we're seeing right now with the attack surface report. Overall, way too much exposure. Just way too many things that don't absolutely need to be connected to the internet are. Whether it's those IoT cameras, whether it's an ICS machine, whatever it is, way too much exposure. The important thing to message there is that every single service, every single piece of infrastructure you have connected to the internet can be reached by hackers 24/7. So if it absolutely doesn't need to be there, let's pull it internal. To end-of-life software. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of Windows 2012 server out there, a lot of Windows 7, a lot of organizations who just really haven't spent the money yet to upgrade their infrastructure to the latest versions. So you're going to spot that a lot. So I would definitely have a talk track about how you can help them upgrade their servers in a very non-intrusive way that won't have any downtime for their business. 3, insecure cloud deployments. A lot of people thought that moving to the cloud was a panacea, but unfortunately, we're seeing the same mistakes in the cloud that we're seeing on premises network. Poor firewall rules, too much exposure, things there that shouldn't be. So just another thing to be aware of with your customers, that a lot of them are going to have those insecure cloud deployments. And lastly, poor web hosting. Oftentimes, not every web hosting company is the same when it comes to security. It's obvious from running a lot of these attack surface reports that some web hosters get it and some have no clue or they just don't care. And a lot of the small and medium-sized businesses that we're running these on, unfortunately, have their websites hosted on organizations like the latter. What that means, and what I tell people, is that your organization's cybersecurity can only be as secure as the cybersecurity of the IP hosting your website. Because if I'm a hacker and I can get onto that box, I can immediately start hosting malware there. It can impact you, it can impact your customers, it can impact your reputation. So it's something to be aware of. I'm not expecting every MSP to start managing their customer's website, but I think the key message here is that us as an MSP, we get it, we understand this risk, and we can point you in the right direction and get you onto a web hosting company that really understands security, so you don't have to worry about that. But that's one that's going to crop up a lot, so I would definitely have a talk track on that. In fact, one of the comments that we can auto-generate in the first section will say, we detected IP, whatever, as hosting your website. It has a poor security posture. You might want to reassess it. That's how often that issue crops up in these reports. Industries in need. So these are the ones really that you might come across that I'm no longer surprised when we see a bad ASR for. The first one is small healthcare, like the organization we ran this trial report on. Small healthcare has a lot of problems. Hospitality. What I mean by hospitality is hotels, restaurants, casinos, probably amusement parks. Don't get a lot from amusement parks, but hospitality in general, really bad. Education, small local school districts, private schools, charter schools, all of those. No longer surprised when we have an attack surface report where it shows really a lot of problems. And the last one would be local government, your municipal governments, your county governments. Uh, Even the big cities have problems, but I think they're multiplied when you get down into the regional level because the budgets just even more so just aren't there. Here's the QR code where you can request your attack surface report. Uh, I get all the details you can provide us, the IPs, the domains, anything helps. And we'll take that. Usually we can spin them around within a couple of hours. Sometimes it takes about 12. But if you can give us a couple days head start, that would be great. The more lead time, the better, because we are getting quite a few attack surface requests right now. And uh, the more time we have, the more we can check them over, just give them a once over, make sure that they're good, that they're not, the automation has worked correctly. And we can also take the time to add more signatures and just make sure that the automation is catching everything it possibly can.
Thanks, Matt, for walking us through those. You're pretty much right on time of like a 30-minute presentation. That's kind of magic of you. So nice work there.
Oh no, I was watching the clock, so I was speeding up and slowing down as necessary.
Hey, a man with a strategy. We have a bunch of questions actually rolling in on this.
Sweet.
So welcome to the hot seat.
All right.
First question, is there a different report based on location, for example, USA versus Canada?
No, no, the code and the automation is the same. There's no difference. And oftentimes we find organizations, especially in Canada, where some of their infrastructure is hosted in the US. So if it's out there, if we can find it, it'll be included in the report.
Next question, they're still rolling in. The number keeps going up.
That's sweet.
Okay.
That's
Next
good.
question.
That means I touched a nerve.
Uh, Hi, I'm not a technician, so I'm just asking, are the bad actors running these types of scans without the IP addresses?
Yeah, I would say for a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, the reason why we need the IP address is that there's nothing in the whois record. I'm sorry, I'm getting technical, but there's nothing in the whois record for that IP that says it belongs to this dental clinic or this small and medium-sized business. If we're running it on an organization that's 500 people, 700, oftentimes they're going to have a net block of IPs that I can find because there's a whois record and Shodan or whatever source we're using knows about that. So it's really critical, the IP, the smaller the organization, because sometimes all we have is the IP of their router and their website.
Is this report just for the process of selling Covalence or selling Field Effect, or is there a circumstance it would be beneficial for customers who are already using Field Effect services or Covalence?
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's something that comes up a little while, is that right now the ASR, because we're kind of building it up on the side, it does detect some things from an attack surface perspective that Covalence doesn't. And we are working on that. We call it the ASR ARO gap, and we're working to close that. So right now there might be some benefit, but as I said, it's in our product roadmap.
This looks more intensive than the external scans I've seen before. I suppose Field Effect can and will do an internal scan if the organization wants it done.
So I think one of the benefits of Covalence is that from an internal perspective, especially if you have that on-prem appliance, you're getting a lot of the advantages of an intrusive internal scan just passively. So we're looking at the network connections, we're looking at the network traffic, and you get a lot of that for free. I've seen reports, like I'm a Covalence customer as well, and sometimes you will see that stuff that evidence is that, oh yeah, it is looking at all my traffic and trying to spot internal stuff that's weak as well.
When the bad actors use Shodan, how are they able to see the exact location or organization?
One of the queries that they'll do is they'll do either a host name or an SSL query on the domain name of the organization, and it will bring up any IP that Shodan finds that has an SSL certificate with that domain. Same thing with the host name. And we do the same queries. in our report to find those IPs. And that's why, especially for a large organization, we usually get a really good report just based off that domain name because we're running those same queries.
The internet can be a scary place. I'm finding this out.
Scary place. It's a fascinating place, but it's scary.
Do you think you will have a tool we can run on a client site for prospecting?
I'm going to be honest, I don't think that is in our product roadmap right now. But what MSPs might be looking for is something they can go on site to a customer's network and
Mm.
deploy, and it would tell them all of the problems. I do know that we're trying to make the trial process a whole lot more seamless and improve that. So I think that's going to replace having to create a customized tool that would do that. Is just allow you guys to more easily spin up Covalence for a short period of time on a prospect with a virtual appliance, and then just start showing them the AROs. In my opinion, that's the way to go there.
Is all of this information sourced from Shodan, or are there other tools being leveraged here
Oh
as well?
yeah, yeah. So we are using Census now as well. We're starting to build in the code, so it's kind of taking the best of those both worlds. Best of those two services. Sometimes one of them will have information that the other won't. So when you combine Census and Shodan, it really helps fill in those gaps and make sure that we're providing the most thorough report possible. But Shodan was there first. It's kind of like the OG when it comes to these types of tools, and it's the one I have most experience with.
How do the different laws governing states govern the outcomes of this report?
This is all open source information. I don't know the legalities of Shodan, but I think generally speaking, the courts have determined that this type of network reconnaissance left of boom, where you're not throwing exploits and you're just mapping, is completely legit as far as an internet reconnaissance standpoint.
How do people generally react to the report?
Overall, we're still doing it, so mostly favorable. I have seen a couple of discussions that I've been a part of go off the rails, but generally speaking, those conversations are where the consent was gotten from a non-technical leader in the organization, and then they brought their IT guy in on the conversation and kind of dropped it on him. That's never going to go well.
If I use an ASR for an existing customer, I'm worried about how it might come across if they have vulnerabilities while under our management. I know
Yeah,
it's
that's
reality, but is there a better way to position the information when delivering it?
Yeah, that's fair. And one of the things we do for MSP partners and prospects is because you know, we just provide them the report for one of their customers so they can see what the report does. They can fix the issue, and the customer never has to see the report. That's definitely another use case for the attack surface report, and I think it's completely legitimate.
Where's the best spot in a marketing funnel to put the ASR?
Yeah, I'm not a marketing guy, but I would say top of funnel, put the request. Don't generate the report at top of funnel because, I mean, then we'd have people sending in their entire CRMs. But I would say put the request as top of funnel. Say that if you come in, talk to us, we'll give you this complimentary report, let you know where you're at. And I think by getting that report, you're going to be able to tailor your talk track about how your services can help this organization.
The carrot that you can dangle in the cybersecurity conversation with your prospects.
Yeah, for sure. And if you want to combine that discussion with a Covalence demo, so much better.
Well, that's it for our questions. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. I
Right
think
on. This was a lot of fun. Thank you, Chloe.
awesome. Thanks again for joining us, and see you at the next one.